AWE 2018, huh? It's easy to say that this is the best show that we've ever had because everything is moving so fast and things are getting so good. It's just literally every year tops itself. It's a fun time to be doing this stuff. Let me get plugged in, hang on. All right, how are we doing on slides from the thing? Boom, 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 boom. Can't see anything. All right, so we are here to talk about the AR cloud. We've assembled a group of really amazing people who are famous for anything else common in doing things that are really hard, doing really remarkable things before they're easy. And that's the kind of people that you want to kick off a new endeavor with the ability to do anything. You want to hit it? You want to just push it out? Yeah, so AR Cloud. We are going to kind of introduce some of the concepts of what's really the biggest change in our industry since we've been talking about doing AR. And that's less focus on applications that change a view and more about the world around us and how it's going to come alive with content and experiences that really are going to help define this next internet in the world around us. So we'll talk a little bit about what it is, and then we've got people with great domain expertise in all sorts of different aspects of creating this what's going to be a public resource that will underpin this world wide web or this internet of places and things around us from every aspect of what needs to be done. And we'll hear from them a little bit, and then we'll take your questions. And really the concept of this, we're here talking about the entirety of what's to come, which will be underpinned by this AR cloud. Trying to do it in an hour. We're really, I think next year you'll see at AWE we'll have a track related to this kind of thing and the associated technology and the companies that are making it happen in different kinds of environments. And that's, we'll expand on that. But we really wanted to introduce what some of these innovative startups are doing and then invite you, if you're working in and around this kind of thing, to join in the working groups and really help us build and birth this next internet around us. So again, we're gonna introduce the folks, and then we'll talk a little bit about the issues that they're working on to help make it happen. I'm Dave Lorenzini. I'm on the board of AWE with Ori here, and again, this conference is getting better every year. And I've been working in and around building maps and models of the world for my entire career with things like Keyhole that became Google Earth or lots of private kind of maps of the world. And I think a lot of that is going to carry over given what we're trying to build, which is really just a copy. The AR cloud is really a copy of the real world. How are we doing on slides? Okay. Try again. It's a very visual thing, so. Are you just getting no signal? How you doing? If we have to talk our way through this, it's going to be very, very dry. Can you connect my notebook back there? Okay. One more. Let me push it out again. Okay. So take this back there, try it there, and let me give you some power. All right. Yeah, I got it. That's fine. Perfect. All right. So while he's getting that, let's introduce the folks here that we've got. We'll just start over from one way to the other. We got Yohan Baillot. Yohan, let me get a mic for you. There we go. Make it work.
Hello everyone, I'm Yohan Baillot. I'm working on augmented reality hands-on development for a whopping 22 years, a lot of time. Originally with the defense sector and more recently in Silicon Valley helping diverse startups entering this field. I've built a consulting company over the last 5 years doing this. I usually develop early prototype, help with roadmap development, and I try to do it without speaking too much with my French accent. I'm a US citizen and French as well. That's me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Perey. I've also been an early evangelist for these technologies. And one of the things that I saw very early is that lack of interoperability would be a big problem. And so I started an open community, a grassroots community of people to address this kind of interoperability problems, and worked with a lot of standards organizations along the way. Another area of expertise that I recognized was the participation and the leadership that enterprises, large enterprises, would take in the development of augmented reality, and how today the AR for Enterprise Alliance, which we started some 4 years ago, is growing and is providing a lot of value to its members. So I'm a board member and founder of the area.
All right. We got our slides, so I'm going to set the stage a little bit, and then we'll talk questions. Okay. All right, so second slide, please, on that. All right, so Ori, where's Ori? He was in the room, but there we go. So as our illustrious founding member of AR.org has said, that this is a big deal. The AR cloud is critical to powering everything that's to come, and it's going to be proved out over time. But the thing to take note of is the massive amount of money and organizations that the portals are spooling up to move the internet off of screens and out into the real world. We're talking about billions of dollars with over 1,000 people at Microsoft, thousands at Google, Apple, largely converting a lot of their stuff they've done with mapping and things, but they're starting to figure it out. So what's the AR cloud? The AR cloud is basically a copy of the world. You'll hear things like an Internet of Places or a digital twin or mirror world. There's cool terms that are coming out like programmable space and machine-readable maps. But basically, in order to move content from screens into the world where it belongs, we need to ideally create an almost near real-time map of the world that helps do a few key things. So an AR cloud system largely does a few main things with localizing devices. Where's my phone? What's it pointing at? What are my glasses looking at? Where am I? And it doesn't matter if you're in a street, in a room, at day or night. It's where the hell is this thing without, far past GPS and other kinds of location technologies. In order to do that, there's lots of methods that are going to be combined, but we've got some really strong efforts and amazing stuff to show that our panelists are going to talk about today. After you've figured out where that phone is, you need to position objects into both real and relative spaces and keep track of that for all of the users by synchronizing all of the views and the actions and the interactions for millions of people at a time, right? So think about the daunting technical challenges to accomplish this stuff. It's just insane. And something that hasn't come up yet, but it's going to be a big part of how things happen is it's not so much about AR or VR. It's more about, are you there or are you not there? Are you local or remote? Are you dealing with a real environment that's being streamed with a 360 camera or something, or right in front of you? Or are you rendering or modeling that a space using things like Unity or other kinds of game engines to draw kind of fake spaces? So ideally, if you do this, when we're here 20 years from now, we'll have our systems that do this instantly for all devices, regardless of where you're at, for massive numbers of people. And what we really want to do while this is beginning is get the principles right. So we want to do this consistently in an open and interoperable way that uses things like blockchain or DLT technology to create some accountability of who placed this obscene digital object in the room at this time. You know, it's knowing everything we can about these digital environments. So the portals are all in on this. Like I said, they're all racing to create an infrastructure to support this world that people are going to live in. Right now, it's a little silly because you're looking at it through your phone. But the minute you put on a good pair of glasses and things just appear and you start talking to the world around you and it responds, it gets to be an amazing dynamic experience. And the startups in the space are doing the same thing. We've got companies that are tackling parts of it, or end-to-end kind of platforms, like what I'm building in Oregon with UR, but basically tackling different kinds of parts of the equation. And beyond the startups and the portals, there's a lot of wild cards out there with companies that really have a lot to gain from this. Amazon has nothing today called an AWS AR Cloud web service, but going forward, it's probably going to be the biggest part of Amazon's revenue will be powering an AR Cloud system that does the recognition and the synchronization and the hosting of the content and the management of all these things and the analysis and everything else. So there's huge companies that have yet to weigh in. And you're also going to see companies like Niantic who with Pokemon Go have found out that the best way to map a space is to put a rare Pokemon into that place and have 200 people show up and wave their phones around, effectively mapping that space. So we also have traditional firms who have beautiful computer vision and other kinds of technology, like Wikitude and Catzoom, and a lot of people who have domain expertise, and we'll talk a little bit about how they fit into this larger cloud world. And we have standards and organizations who are currently managing things on the web or spinning up to address this kind of stuff, which is what we're doing with the Open AR Cloud organization. There's some things that are easy to address with principles and policies and holding an index of what everyone's doing in mapping spaces or positioning objects. And there's harder things to deal with, which is how do we decide on a standard for what a location is or what a position of an object is with respect to everything around it. What DLT or blockchain technology can we use to create spatial smart contracts and keep everything straight? And is there going to be a DNS of locations? Like right now, if you go to CNN.com, it's going to go to one website. In the future, there's certainly going to be some kind of default view for a space, and the idea is if we can, you should be in control of the default view of say your home for existence or your business or things like that. So support for things like digital air rights and other things. Again, there's a lot of internet organizations out there just picking off different pieces of this, and we're here this week working on how to not only figure out our own little world, but interface with these guys. There's some great principles with all the GDPR stuff that's come out that are really good guidelines for how to respect privacy, dignity opportunity for economic participation, right? So if you're mapping a space, Google should really not make all the money for advertising in that space. You should have a seat at the table and a role to play. And we're going to talk about the different kinds of working groups. We're going to spool up and go, but at this point, I want to start asking the panelists, basically. My stuff's in the back now. So we're gonna talk a little bit about things that are going off. I'm gonna look at some notes, but some of the questions, like Jameson here, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself. Does that mic work? And maybe talk to us about how a startup like yours is going to relate or work in the same ecosystem where you have a giant like Google who's converting a lot of their maps and other kinds of services to account for AR cloud stuff. So why don't you tell us what you're doing and how that works?
Yeah, my name is Jameson Detweiler. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Fantasmo. We build open source technology for spatial mapping. So our core product is called Terra OS, Terra operating system. It takes in 2D and 3D camera data, outputs a 3D model of the environment, and then enables robust 6DoF localization or positioning. In terms of competing with Google, I mean, I think the big thing that people probably know about is Google's visual positioning system that they put out there. And at the end of the day, like, the thing that is going to be problematic for Google too, or any sort of the incumbents to do, is to scale that technology inside. We know that because we are working with venues and malls and other companies that own, valuable private property. The model that we think is going to emerge inevitably is an open standard for camera-based positioning, as well as really kind of the other derivative things that you need to do AR at scale. And so the visual positioning solution is ultimately going to be stored wherever the property owner wants to store that. And so we think that you build open solutions, open standards that ultimately over time will gain adoption across the platforms in this interoperable way. And that's what we do. So kind of our core R&D focus right now is around what we call the camera positioning standard. This is basically they're publishing all of the work for that standard, the formats, the libraries to actually produce that from imagery. And we think that if we can do this and open this up, that ultimately by democratizing this and devaluing the technology, you can actually compete with any of the large incumbents, Google included.
So grab this. Next up, we have Matt Miesnieks, who's founder and CEO of a company called 6D AI. And my question for Matt is what are some of the technical challenges and things that you're addressing now to make this happen and enable AR cloud functions before we have a full built-out map and model of the world?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, AR cloud as a term's kind of exciting right now, and it doesn't take too much time spent thinking about what it means and to get excited and realize that this sort of thing has to be built. The interesting problem, I guess the interesting aspect of it that I spent a lot of time thinking on is how is it going to happen? What's the timing of these different steps? And right now, to enable things like multiplayer or persistent content or large-scale occlusion or large-scale outdoor games, the problems to be solved are still technical problems. There's still computer vision problems, there's still sensor problems. And so what we are doing at 6D, we're a spin-out from one of the top computer vision labs in the world at Oxford University, and we are really trying to solve those hardest of the hard computer vision algorithms and then expose them to developers as APIs, similar to the way AWS exposes the cloud. We want to expose the real world, and try and make it easy for developers to then move to that next type of problem, which is what type of interactions work and what type of apps make sense. So that's us.
Awesome. And next we have Kate Chapman, who she'll tell you about what she's doing and how it plays with what's to come here.
Hi, so as Dave mentioned, I'm Kate Chapman. I'm a managing principal at Cascadia Technical Mentorship. We're a consultancy that advises organizations that are building community around open source and open data. I'm also the chairperson of the OpenStreetMap Foundation. For those that might not be familiar, it's a free map of the entire world anyone can contribute to. Nowadays, some of the largest tech companies in the world have started using our data. Apple, Facebook, as well as NGOs, Doctors Without Borders, American Red Cross. And we went from an individual sort of hobby project to be a true free map of the entire world with all levels of people and organizations using it. So what I was going to speak to were some of the lessons we've learned over the years. I've been involved for 10 years. The project's been around for 14. The first, and this I think is actually a more commercial audience, so maybe this isn't as important, but open shouldn't be only a moral argument. A lot of times in open source and open data, we say it has to be open, and we're just saying it's a moral thing. It also makes business sense. So it's important to realize, though, those individual contributors that you want to contribute, they may view it from very much a moral aspect. They may not care about your business and monetizing it. So you have to think about both of those audiences. Another one is try to get your licensing right the first time. We went through a license change. It was very painful to our community. At the same time, you might not get it right, so have those legal paths where it's possible to change it, hopefully by not having every single person who's ever contributed say it's okay. And then finally, others might win first. I mean, Google Maps is out there. There's no reason for me to pretend it isn't. It took a long time for large organizations competing in the mapping space to start using our data. But finally, really the tipping point was Google started charging for their API, and they started charging more. And as that happens, more and more companies see that it makes business sense to go open.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, and next we've got Apprentice.io, and talk to us about how the AR Cloud, we have a lot of people here doing enterprise-related stuff. Why and how is the cloud going to be important to and relate to the enterprise stuff that you're doing?
Yeah. My name is Nabil Shehadeh. I'm the VP of Product and Technology at Apprentice.io. Apprentice is an enterprise AR product, builds an enterprise AR product focused on the pharmaceutical and the biotech industry. Personally, I've been building AR and AI enterprise product for the past 7 years and dealing a lot with the localization of content, or more broadly or more generically, contextualization of content, meaning that how to make a smart system that can help the user in doing their job in the enterprise world. So dealing with and the AR cloud concept or localization of concept came by as a very powerful tool to help the workflows of enterprise in being smarter and more intelligent. For example, you want to associate content manuals with certain equipments in certain locations, or when you take photos, they're associated with specifically the location where you took the photos and so on. And so we build a focused product for the pharmaceutical and biotech industry. And from the lessons we learned in enterprise, a couple things to mention. One, in enterprise, definitely that type of data needs to be very private and secured for the enterprise, so they gonna probably own that content, or if the system provides a way to store this content in a very secure and way in the cloud that you cannot reverse engineer it and create, the 3D scene of the facility. That's one. So privacy is a big thing. And the second piece is to also understand that this concept is, there has been over the past couple of years a big improvement in localization that is based on visual positioning. But this is going to be a progressive technology to the current state of the technology. So there's a lot of localization techniques, and it's going to keep improving. So it's being focused, what we learned, being focused on a specific ROI and a specific use case will help a lot in designing a software that becomes intelligent and contextualized and localized. So thinking about the AR cloud as not a switch that is on or off, like now we have AR Cloud, now we don't, but more of a progressive thing of what is the current localization technology, and understanding from the standards point of view how to come up with a certain standard that would work on different levels of this technology as it progresses would be very important, and always focusing on a real ROI and a real use case that helps the end user helps a lot in building such systems, because there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of ways to do localization, and you can create something that keeps giving you good ROI on different levels of the progress of this technology.
Cool. Great. So clearly, with all these players working to create workable solutions, like you're mentioning, we're going to have any number of private or local coordinate spaces and clouds to get this stuff done. Jan-Erik is from a mapping company in Norway, and he's been working on translating some of the cartographic and mapping solutions to what we're doing. Why don't you tell us about the Open AR Cloud org that you're doing?
Yeah, hello, my name is Jan-Erik from Norway. I'm working in a geospatial software solution company called Norkart. Last year, we worked on a prototype for the Norwegian Mapping Authority, where we geo-aligned geographical coordinates with the coordinate system of the AR device. So we were able to show cadastral boundaries on the ground. We used an open data set from the Norwegian government, which is like a height grid with 1 by 1 meter resolution. We did that alignment manually, and we understood, obviously, that that was not a good solution for the end users. So what we needed to do for making this sort of technology viable for end users is do it automatically. And we started thinking about the cloud, building a new type of map that you could send information from the device to the cloud model and get a geo-aligned coordinate back, something we called geopose, like a 6 degree of freedom coordinate, but which is globally unique. It's not like every sort of device and any sort of platform could be using that sort of coordinates for any sort of purpose, where you want to have multiplayer or you want to have persistent content. Then I saw the blog from Uri Inbar, where he termed the coin the AR cloud, and I understood this is like, it's like you have the temperature and the moisture is right, and I think people have been working on these ideas for many, many years, but with that sort of concept, people started talking to each other. And I started this Open AR Cloud Foundation in February, Open AR Cloud Initiative in February. And quite rapidly I was able to get people like Christine and Yohan and Uri and a professor from NTNU and people from startups to join this initiative. And now we're trying to merge with the AR Cloud Foundation. So this, for me, I see this as a historical occasion. The AWE 2018, it is like the birthplace of the shared programmable space that is going to be the foundation for the next digital platform, replacing everything that came before, like smartphones. So we want to do this right. And so we have like everyone on this table, and many of you in the audience, I would like to invite you all to join this effort, this endeavor. Bring your rocket fuel and make this go into orbit, so we can have something that is not necessarily based on the greatest but most stupid business model on earth, ads, where you spy on people's behavior and try to modify their behavior based on your sponsors. And we can do this. There are so many skilled people with so much experience. So tomorrow we will make an announcement and we will send out an invitation where you can join. and we will start to get this more formalized and get the working groups together. So.
That's great. Thanks. Next, we have Anton, who's doing a practical version of a lot of this today with real estate in New York and a brilliant system to capture spaces and be able to communicate those and use them in a lot of different ways, which is going to be a huge part of what's coming. So Anton, why don't you tell us what you're doing?
Sure. So my name is Anton Yakubenko. I'm a co-founder and CEO of GeoCV. And GeoCV enables businesses to capture and share spaces in 3D plus 360. And we do it in a unique way using a smartphone with 3D camera without any special expensive hardware. And the question about, I say, cloud is how we can leverage this content beyond our professional application in real estate marketing to more consumer applications which could utilize this content in an AR cloud way. And I just would like to share a couple of examples how we see this going further. And the cool thing that this could be actually done in the nearest future as soon as some of the basic problems in AR cloud are solved by other companies. So imagine yourself a consumer and you come to an empty home, you pick up your phone and you just walk around the space and you see how the space looks like with virtual furniture, for example, to help you visualize how you're gonna live in this space, whether a king-size bed would fit in here. So from our side, we'll capture the content and the AR Cloud will allow you using your consumer app to actually consume the content since you're a consumer. The second example is to empower, I would say, professionals to use this content for the sake of the consumer applications. And since consumers are lazy, we create content for them, and then with the consent of the consumer, we can share it with the professionals like an interior design company. And as soon as you purchase your new home, somebody can already show you, it will look like this with the new furniture, with the new colors of the wall, or something like this. So it's something beneficial because somebody else has captured the content, but you can utilize it in a different way. And finally, some content could be only captured by professionals, but you can leverage it afterwards. Imagine that we capture the building during construction, so we know where all the pipes and cables are inside the walls. And now you want to do some renovation. You just point your phone, and the data from the cloud downloads from the historical database and shows, okay, the pipe is there, don't make hole in this space. So our idea as a company is to capture brick and mortar spaces during the whole life cycle of this real estate, and first monetize the actual capturing process for professional, but then consumers can leverage this content for many, I would say, casual applications.
And the portability of spaces. So it's a really unique moment in time where we're literally living in a blank canvas. There's about to be a world of digital content overlaid and blended with what we see with our bare eyes, but right now it's a completely white canvas. There's no permanent, persistent digital content out in the world that's meaningful that we're dealing with. So the tools to both author or mark up space either systematically to press a button and put something at 50,000 Starbucks around the world, or ad hoc as a user goes through user-generated content. Going forward, every picture you take is going to hang in space exactly where you took it forever, for that moment in time. And then if my son's running through Europe and taking 360 panel bubbles of videos and pictures, I can go there later, pop my head inside of a bubble, and see what it was like in that space, effectively going back in time to see how something existed. Insurance adjusters and other people are going to love that for a business, today. But really think about this ability to leave things like notes, media, 3D models, and characters all over the world to tell compelling and useful stories to the rest of humanity. It's just a staggering tool that we're bringing to bear here. And Christine's been working on the practical stuff with enterprise as well. So,
yeah, I wanted to add And I want to thank the panelists for bringing up so many great points. And I wanted to add a couple things. One is the concept sounds so new and revolutionary, but as other people have pointed out, it's building upon many things that were done before. I'm thinking of, for example, manufacturing lines have been completely digitized. Newport News shipbuilding models are completely digitized before and during the building process. There have been micro clouds in existence for, I'm going to say, years, maybe even decades, in some environments. And these micro clouds can serve, they serve very real purposes today for enterprises, and those enterprises have a lot of experience. Also, a lot of the panelists have talked about alternative business models, alternative to advertising. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to think through clearly and deeply what is the value that you're bringing to your customer, because that's how you should think about monetization. If you are doubtful or unsure or unclear about the value proposition, then advertising is kind of a low-hanging fruit. So I hope that many companies will be talking with customers and getting more clear about the business models and monetization options. And I would, as many already said, or you showed support, that we find alternatives to plastering the world with advertisement.
Right. So up to this point, we had the rectangle of the day. We had the television, the computer monitor, the cell phone, all these things, rectangles that we look into. This is the first time where we're breaking off screens and into the world. And it's the advertising networks of yesterday will quickly become to things like attention networks with sponsored experiences that your kids are going to have fun with. So instead of putting up a banner ad of before, it's wishing your friend a happy birthday with a Pepsi piñata that just appears in your living room. Your kid shakes your phone at it until it bleeds $2 coupons for Pepsi or something. But things that people pick one of a 1,000 digital balloons that are on the ceiling of this conference room, and if you pick the right one, then Hajj will give you a free night here at the hotel, right? So sponsored, engaging experiences are going to be a big part of stuff going forward. But really, think about things, again, not AR or VR, just are you there, are you not there? The interactions between people who are in a VR headset and can interact with all of us in this room. Your phone buzzes, and it's your friend lobbing a ball that you have to catch to throw back. Again, just interactions, bringing people together to the people and things and places they love. That's the promise of this technology, and it's going to be groundbreaking. Yohan, you want to add anything?
Sure, I can. Do we have some time?
Got a little bit, and then we'll take a couple of questions.
Okay, so maybe some consideration on the architecture. I don't have myself a product to introduce you, but I've been thinking of this problem for a while. I've been working on prototype for a minute. So I think there is two things. First of all, there is the content, and there is the capability of pose estimation. The content is what do we put in the word, and how do we agree what can be put there, and how do we see it. And maybe there is several views of it, like, for example, the lens idea of Bart. But this is not something I have really a lot to say. But on the tracking problem, the pose estimation problem, is something I have something to say about. So the cloud is in the form that I think we think about as far as the pose estimation problem is concerned, is about creating a almost live 3D model of the world. And if some of you have seen things like PhotoSense, you know what I'm talking about. You have several people that are taking several views of the same thing, and from that you create a point cloud, and then a 3D model of the world. So why do you use that? You use that to be able to estimate your pose by submitting then a view of the real world and comparing it with a 3D model, you get your pose. There is other method than that, but it generally is the approach. So To be able to do that, you are not going to be able to use drone today or robot because they cannot fly over your head, and we don't know how they can navigate in a busy store like a mall. It is going to be people. And so people are going to need to do the capture, and granted, we can probably have people doing capture and being paid by company to do it, but really it's going to be you and I. And so how are we going to make that happen? To be able to make that happen, we probably going to need some incentive so that not the same that we have had for Web 2.0 happen. Basically, there is only few people that contribute, and a lot are actually consuming the content. So maybe we want to think about some kind of economy of people providing things to the system and people consuming things from the system. And it can be data, it can be also potentially some storage, some computing power, because you could have the cloud actually not being in the cloud on big server, but on everybody's phone and living around. And this intelligence basically knowing that you need some data over there will know to go to that specific phone at that place, and at the moment where you're going to look around is going to take the picture without you knowing. So for that to happen, you need to have interoperability. Everybody needs to know how to talk about, I need these things from there at that time, and so that you can actually scale. Because if any of the big companies are just doing that for their crowd, they won't know about the car that passed by right now that is not captured by your current user. And so when you want to do things in the distance, when you want to have continuous tracking, a continuous experience as you go, you really need to engage a lot of different users, and everybody needs to kind of use the same picture. It doesn't mean we have to use one single database. We can make sure that our databases are communicating with each other and can be basically sharing data with each other for the benefit of human rights. So this is something that I would like everybody to try to think about and try to go in direction to bring the giant with us. So
right, thanks. Great. So we're almost out of time, but really we've got we want you to get involved. We're going to create some working groups. Okay, got it. Got 10 minutes left. So we want to create these working groups. If you're working on any angle of any of these kinds of issues, please come talk to us, tell what you're doing, and then you'll see more announcements from augmentedreality.org and AWE on how to get involved with bringing your ideas and solutions to help create this monumental shift in computing and how we live our lives. So, questions? Yeah.
Where do we see the AR cloud moving forward in the future? Is it going to look like it's going to be in the hands of just a couple of large players in a consolidated model, let's say Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, or do we see it on a more decentralized spectrum where people fit more niche kind of industries? And in that case, if it does go to a decentralized model, does building in standards now, is that what's going to save us and then to be able to move forward with such a model?
Yeah, so everyone's taking it very seriously, and but we have great examples in this room of incredibly disruptive stuff. With a guy who wrote Keyhole, basically the back and the front of that, the client and the server, who effectively disrupted an entire mapping industry by just creating a functional thing that worked. And instead of waiting for standards, he created KML, which supplanted some of the more established things that have been done in cartography for years. We've got guys who functionally made 3D models work with Tony Parisi and GLTF and pushing through a functional way to get something done. So there's a lot of opportunity for smaller companies to come into the space and kick some ass, because we literally, this is a big issue in a big world with a lot of uses. And there's the innovation we've seen just from the people on the stage is incredible. So, anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, I think there are going to be a lot of players, just like how the cloud it is right now, and the different cloud services you could get. The AR cloud, or this new localization technique based on visual positioning, is very much like that. And I think, you know, some companies in the enterprise world where I come from, there's a lot of need for, you know, having, you know, small micro clouds or private clouds, just like how it is now with AWS or with Microsoft, that you can have an instance for a specific customer, for a specific enterprise. And this type of localization or 3D mapping is going to follow the same concept. And these services probably are going to be given in that format as well, that you can have, if you're a business, a big enterprise, you can have your, just like you would have your own AWS instance, you could have your, you know, maps over there as well, and everything getting localized there, and you own the data. It's just a new web service that's going to be given.
Right, just like the first web, when you, in order to get on the internet, you'd go buy a Cisco server and go get a T1 line, hook them up, and boom, you're online. We expect to see a lot of the same stuff with locations that have requirements with privacy or serving a large number of users. If you're going to try to put AR cloud or AR operations into a basketball arena or a stadium, you're going to need local servers that look like IoT servers with inputs for things like LiDAR sensors doing collision detection or serving a need, which are also caching the content and the experiences local, keeping all of the analytics and stuff local to that environment as well, which will benefit the property owners and things, but also include them on the revenue piece. So you could be buying 5 years from now, you could be buying a $25,000 server for your business from IoT server company that pays itself off in a couple of months or shorter, given the number of people going through your space or things like that. So there's incredible opportunities up and down the ecosystem. Yeah, question?
Hi there, Greg Panos. How does the industry plan to adapt to the fact that carriers, and in specific the rolling out of 5G, still seems to be reflecting the old data cap model? It's pretty clear that AR and acquisition of 3D data through various means, I've got a time-of-flight sensor on this phone, I digitize everything I can, and I could see lots of people uploading to the cloud contributions of spaces and things that they feel are relevant, and all that data going up and all that data coming down is still gate-kept by the providers that happen to be in service. So here we are, but none of us are Verizon, and even if we were, we wouldn't be able to tell Verizon what to do. So it'll get better if we get better bandwidth, but not if we get nickel and dime to death in the process of downloading a model or finding our way around town. So maybe you want to speak to that.
Somebody want to do 30 seconds on?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. Now we go through the cloud, and the cloud has a tendency to getting these huge titans that everybody goes through. But AR could be very local. So there's no reason why we cannot develop technology, develop hardware that delivers the local data on site and completely sidestepping Google or Amazon.
You have things like IPFS in the blockchain world that help distributed data access. Again, in a
yeah, you can do it like you can do the blockchain way, and you can do it like local hardware way. There are like many ways to do this, but we can go around those tech titans if we like to. But it demands a huge effort.
Yeah, like what is happening right now in the crypto world, we basically potentially on the verge of replacing bank with people that can be basically individual bank and do exchange between them. We could potentially do the same. I'm not saying that's a solution, but that's a possible exploration direction. Everybody could become their own company and basically contribute it to the system with processing, data, capture, with storage space, so that you basically have local cloud that are communicating with each other with mesh networking, which does not need 5G.
And largely, you're going to be giving up your you're going to be working with the portal products and things. Apple, for example, is doing a lot in the terms of navigation. So instead of turn by turn on your phone, you just see it as a see your instructions in the real world. Things like that are going to bring a lot of utility. So utility drives a lot of the interaction that you're going to have with the larger platforms, and you're going to have amazing creative expression on the private side as well. Other questions? Or?
Yeah, I would like to add a point because that's a very interesting question. And, you know, the way to approach it, in my opinion, is that it's not, again, going to be, you know, that switch that now everything is AR, cloud, 3D streaming, and so on, because of the point you made that, you know, 5G is going to come, you know, or the different layers in the technology that are going to cap the experience. But the point that I would like to make is that you can deliver different levels of experiences for different levels of the technology. So the point is, I think the right way, or the way that I think about it, or, you know, one way to think about it is what can you achieve with the current, you know, technology, with the current bandwidth that you get with 4G or with the first version of 5G, and how to build for the future. Because you can deliver some AR experiences on that front. It might not be the fully blown AR that you imagine, but there's a lot of things that you can deliver now, and you can build so that for the future it keeps growing and you can cater for the future.
That's really important because we're really up against the social pressures of having waving a lot of cameras around or having fixed cameras in rooms that you come into. And until we trade off the compelling utility, you know why you have 4 cameras in your living room, because your grandparents can interact with your kids and they can have digital characters inhabiting that space, making them smarter, more entertained, and more connected to the people they love. You're going to be trading off this stuff, but we have huge social issues to deal with people getting familiar with the fact that every camera is not recording you. It could be sensing an environment. So we're going to have a working group on how to address a lot of this stuff. It's going to be huge. We got 1 or 2 more questions, but over here. But lots of
Hello, I'm Cyrus Lum, CTO of Clever Robot Labs. So we're also working on AR cloud technology. One of the things that we've been looking at, you know, there was the GDPR, right? So they had a thing where people can do a clawback on their data. I can contribute data, and then I could say, hey, you know what? I don't want to participate anymore. So you have to be able to rip that out. So we're also working with crowdsource collaborative mapping. So when it comes down to being able to contribute to a cloud, and let's say there are more laws like this other than Europe, where people are able to say, you know what, I want to pull it back. What ends up happening? Because now, you know, that data is kind of intermingled.
Especially if it's immutable on a blockchain stored.
Yeah. So then, what do you think happens? What's, you know, and also the idea that a lot of cloud technology is based off the idea that you're grabbing RGB camera data. That's part of how the data is. You know, ARCore, when they released their 1.2, and they have their AR anchors, or their cloud anchors. They actually have a small little fine print that says, we'll remove the RGB data after 7 days. Now, most of the general public doesn't know that yet. You know, they don't realize that, you know, RGB data is going to be part of that. So I guess what's the feeling about how to deal with this that I think could be, you know, probably a big thing later on?
Yeah,
and the public gets a hold
really
of it.
that's really what we're coming to grips with, and I'll take that for a sec. And yeah, the adventure continues. It's we're going to have to figure out a lot of things. They're going to think about delivering solutions for certain environments to certain users, and then work back off that. That's really the short answer. But Matt's been writing a lot about this stuff lately, and with the last minute, give me a minute of how to think about it going forward and why it matters.
Yes, so Cyrus, with the GDPR, I'm still researching it myself. My superficial understanding was that clawback right applies to personally identifiable data. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think that's how it is. So when something gets merged into a map and it all mingles together and is no longer personally identifiable, my understanding at the moment is that that wouldn't be subject to clawback, but obviously there's types of map data. We could have like a photorealistic texture applied to a mesh and of part of your house, that is obviously personally identifiable. So there's going to be new types of problems to be solved there around compliance with GDPR. I think that it's easy to imagine a whole bunch of hypothetical problems that, what if this or what if that? And, at least from our point of view at 6D, we are trying to stay focused on, what the product actually is, what it actually does, and then how do we comply with the various, legislations and laws around the world. We don't really have a choice on that side of it. Yeah.
And really, while we're trying to create this entire real-time map of the world, you need to remember that it works on a point-to-point basis. If I want to have an experience with a friend or someone across the world, all I really need to do that is the environment that I'm in and the environment he's in, and we can have an amazing kind of experience. So there's lots of opportunities. We're going to be working on this. Love to get your input and help, and stay tuned on AR.org. And thanks to the great guys working to make it happen today. And thanks for coming.